Hi, everybody. This is Marlene with Eerie News, and today is November 4th, 2024, Monday, November 4th, 2024. And the first story, like always, is out of Stranger Than Fiction Stories, and it's titled The Vatican Secret Graveyard. On October 29th, 2018, renovations were being carried out in the Vatican, close to the Via Borghese. Builders were restoring a floor in the janitor's lodge. Considering the age of the buildings and the grounds, this type of work is commonplace, but not what was found, which was a human skeleton. Once the story of the discovery was leaked to the Italian press, it was inevitable the name of Emanuela Orlandi would come up. She was the daughter of a Vatican employee who disappeared on June 22, 1983. She had attended a flute lesson near the 7th century courtyard of St. Apollinare Church and was last seen getting into a dark green BMW. Only 15 years old when she disappeared, there had been several supposed sightings of Emanuela throughout the years. Father Gabriel Amorth, the Vatican's chief exorcist who died in 2016, claimed that through his work he had come across information that she was being kept as a sex slave inside the Vatican city walls. In 2012, Amorth told La Stampa newspaper, quote, "This was a crime with a sexual motive. Parties were organized with a member of the Vatican Gendarmerie acting as a recruiter of the girls. The network involved diplomatic personnel from a foreign embassy to the Holy See. I believe Emanuela ended up a victim of this circle." End quote. The Orlandi family lived inside the historic Vatican City, having access to the Vatican gardens. Another theory regarding Emanuela's disappearance is that her father worked in the Vatican Bank and that she was kidnapped to silence her father after he allegedly discovered information which connected Roberto Calvi, known as God's banker, to organized crime. Almost a year to the date before Manuela's disappearance, Roberto Calvi was found hanging under Blackfriars Bridge in London. His pockets were filled with cash and bricks, and his death was initially ruled a suicide. Calvi belonged to the Masonic Lodge Propaganda do P2, who referred to themselves as Frati Neri, or Blackfriars. It was suspected he was murdered as a Masonic warning because of symbolism to the word Blackfriars, where his body was found. His body was examined several times to determine the cause of death. The last time it was exhumed in 1998, and a report was published in 2002, which confirmed earlier findings that Calvi could not have hanged himself due to lack of rust and paint on his shoes. Also, his neck injuries were not consistent with hanging. In 2003, the London police reopened the case. More evidence unearthed showed that prior to his death, he stayed at Chelsea Cloisters. Sergio Vaccari, a drug dealer, stayed in the same flat, and 3 months after Calvi's death, he was found stabbed in the face, neck, and chest more than 15 times. The dead man had Masonic papers in his possession with the member names of P2. The murders of both men involved bricks stuffed in their clothing. In October 2005, 5 men were put on trial for Calvi's murder, which included his own bodyguard. They were all acquitted due to the length of time after the crime and the fact that there were many who wanted him dead, including Vatican officials and mafia figures. If these possible culprits and conspiracies were not sinister enough, another one was tied to calls Emanuela's family started to receive in the days following her kidnapping. The caller said that she would be released if Mehmet Ali Agca, the Turkish man who shot and injured Pope John Paul II in 1981, was released. The calls eventually stopped, and Agca was pardoned and released in 2010. He said that Emanuela had been kidnapped by a Bulgarian gang but did not add any further information, leaving the family no closer to finding her. The caller was believed to be mentally unstable. In 2012, another attempt was made to solve the mystery of the poor girl's disappearance by opening the grave of Enrico Renatino de Peris, a local mob boss who was interred in a crypt under St. Apollinare Church. He was ambushed and murdered by rival gang members in 1990. The belief was that Emanuela had been buried with him. The grave was opened and mysterious bones were found, but none were the young girl's. Another question arose, which was why a member of the Magliana crime family would be buried in a church owned by the Holy See. This was a church consecrated in 549 AD and was built next to an ancient pagan cemetery. It turned out that the Petty's family had asked to bury him there for fear of his tomb being vandalized, and initially they were turned away. However, church officials later changed their minds after the family made a contribution of 1 billion lire, the equivalent of about 500,000 euros today, according to Italian media reports. After the exhumation, he was not reinterred there. Fast forward to a few days before Halloween 2018, when this discovery near Villa Borghese was unearthed. There was a preliminary identification that the bones belonged to a woman. A week after the discovery, police were digging in the property basement when they came upon a skull and a lower jaw. DNA tests were carried out in November 2018 for the bones found buried under the pavement of the Apostolic Nunciature of Via Po. The hopes were to match them either to Emanuela or Mireia Gregori, another teenager who disappeared in May 1983. Her case has never been solved either. The property where the bones were found is an extraterritorial church property located in Rome's city center. The villa was gifted to Pope Pius XII in 1949 by a wealthy entrepreneur called Abramo Giacobbe Isaiah Levi to thank the Vatican for welcoming and protecting Jews under fascist persecution. Gregori lived just a few blocks from this location when she disappeared. An additional lead was that the body might belong to the wife of the custodian of the property who disappeared in the 1960s. The bones were too old to be the custodian's wife and the two girls who disappeared in the 1980s. The Orlandi case has been examined twice, from 1983 to 1997 and from 2008 to 2015. The mystery persists, with different theories as to what happened to her. They range from a kidnapping as part of a Cold War Soviet plan to blackmail Pope John Paul II, that she was given over for sexual orgies attended by a Vatican-based sect of Satanists, or that she was taken by the mafia. One of the connecting threads in all these theories is pedophilia among high-ranking Catholic priests, in which the mafia laundered Catholic money, but also did the dirty work of stealing children for them. The Vatican and the CIA. This was an excerpt from a report that was issued about the investigation. The Vatican and the CIA have grown together in the manner of a biblical beast, the legs of one, the mouth of the other. All the leaders of American intelligence belong to the Order of Malta, the second name of which is the armed arm of the Vatican. Leon Panetta since February of 2009, George Tenet from 1997 to 2004, Mike Haight 2006 to 2009, Robert Gates 1991 to 1993, Director of the CIA since 2006, Secretary of Defense. End quote. In February 1987, the Washington Post printed an article about a sect known as the Finders. They were founded in Washington, D.C. in the early 70s by former United States Air Force Master Sergeant Marion Petty. They were involved in several orphanages around the world, and where they settled, neighbors noticed they always had several children on the premises who did not attend school and were cared for by different people who lived in their commune. They were led by a guru who called himself the Stroller. In a Glover Park house in northeast Washington, D.C., where the Finders lived, district police found an ornate tombstone and roundstones gathered near a circle about 70 yards behind the house. Experts have described where these designs are often used in satanic rituals. However, a resident of the commune said they were laid in 1972 as part of a large garden. It's doubtful anyone followed up to see if this was truthful. Evidence of child abuse, pornography, and dark rituals were eventually discovered against the sect. However, the CIA quickly closed the case, and the allegations against the group are considered unfounded conspiracy theories. In 2019, another anonymous tip came to Emanuela's brother Pietro, in which her body could be found in a Teutonic cemetery in the Vatican. The church cooperated and opened the graves indicated. Like other tips, it led nowhere. The inference is unmistakable. Is there a worldwide ring run by highly placed government officials, religious leaders, and other unknown powerful people that indulge in pedophilia and dark rituals? Is this what happened to Emanuela Orlandi? You know what? And as more times go by, right now we're in the midst of the Sean P. Diddy Combs case, which is right now, obviously he's under arrest, and Just about every time I look up something, you see that there's new allegations that are very, very dark and very, very disturbing about what went on at his white parties or whatever, white off or whatever they were, and who was involved in it. So this, maybe once upon a time or when this girl got kidnapped in 1983, many people would have scoffed, as far as involvement of the Vatican. But yeah, it seems that there is definitely a tie-in to where people with money and that feel that they are, how's this? They don't have to be above the law because unfortunately, maybe sometimes the prosecutors or somebody that would go after them. In other words, they've got protection. How's that? Or the best protection of all, which is that that whoever, in other words, everybody's got, if you tell on me, I'll tell on you. That's the best protection. We're all stuck in the same boat, so you better keep your mouth shut. So anyway, and if you hear some mewing, it's because I have a newborn kitten here that I found on a property that was abandoned. She's going on. This is Marnie, by the way. She's going to be 2 or 3 weeks. I'm thinking she's about 3 weeks old. She barely had her eyes open when I found her, and she gets hungry, and that's me, and it's like a baby, one of those deals. But anyway, she doesn't interfere with me reading out the eerie stuff that's going on. Okay, next story is also out of Stranger Than Fiction Stories, and it's titled The 27 Club. The 27 Club is a death list of actors, musicians, artists, and athletes who have died at the age of 27. The majority have died as a result of suicide, substance abuse, homicide, and strange accidents. Many claim there is significance tied to the number of their age to Illuminati and occult groups. It all started when Brian Jones, the founding guitarist of the Rolling Stones, was found at the bottom of his pool on July 3rd, 1969 at the age of 27. Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, and Jim Morrison died between 1969 and 1971. What they all shared was that they had died at the age of 27. When Kurt Cobain died in 1994 at the same age, with the introduction of the internet and instant media, the idea of the 27 Club gained traction. There was a history of suicide in Cobain's family. Two uncles and his great uncle all killed themselves. However, it was Kurt's age that was significant. In 2011, Amy Winehouse, 27, died from alcohol poisoning, even though she had a history of bulimia and substance abuse. Her family had feared her committing suicide due to these factors. Ironically, Amy had expressed fear of becoming part of this club. There is one musician who predates the rockers from the 60s, and that's Robert Johnson, whose story dates back to the 1930s. He was born the illegitimate child of a farmhand in Mississippi in 1911. His mother was married to another man, but her husband fled the area to Memphis due to his own romantic peccadillo. Most of their 10 children eventually ended up with him. His mother remarried when he was 7 years old. Johnson married when he was 17 years old, but by the time he was 19, his 14-year-old wife had died in childbirth, and he turned back to music. Though he was persistent in playing at juke joints and other places, he just wasn't well received, and he left town. He reappeared a few months later, and the guy who had been booed off stage now sounded like an expert. He was supposed to have gained guitar skills after he made a deal with the devil. Supposedly, everything changed after he went to a crossroads at Highway 49 and 61 at the Dockery Plantation. This was where he sold his soul in exchange for mastery over the guitar. In 1936, he recorded his first single, Terraplane Blues, and before he could really enjoy his new fame, he died on August 16, 1938. It would take 30 years before his death certificate was found, and it did not list a cause of death, and no autopsy had been performed on the body. The reason for the death at the age of 27 is varied, including a belief he was poisoned by a jealous husband. Many years after his death, someone checked the back of his death certificate and found a note saying the owner of the plantation where Johnson died thought he'd been killed by syphilis. Most likely it was congenital syphilis, which occurs when a mother with untreated syphilis passes the infection to her baby during pregnancy or birth. No one knows exactly where Robert Johnson was buried. Whatever the real cause, whispers swirled that the devil came to collect his end of the deal sooner than Johnson anticipated. One of the last to be included in the group is Anton Yelchin, Star Trek Beyond actor, who died at age 27. On June 19, 2016, he was fatally pinned by his car after it rolled down the steep driveway of his LA home. He was found pressed in between his brick mailbox and security fence. Why is 27 an important number to occultists? It is a number sacred to Satanists and Saturnists and included in worldwide rituals that outsiders are unaware of. These ceremonies are practiced in secret at the highest level of church and state. The cube is the perfect representation of the number 27, expressed as 3 times 3 times 3 with identical factors grouped in threes. There are 27 chapters in the Bible's New Testament. There are 27 letters in the Kabbalah, 27 channels to God, and 27 names for God, according to the Bible. Dates or seasons are important when practicing occult rituals, such as secret sacrifices to Baal. This was a Canaanite and Phoenician deity and the son of the chief god El. It is depicted in the shape of a bull or ram and was associated with fertility. Sacrifices were made to the deity, including children. Was a secret sacrifice to Baal offered on June 19th when Jelchin died. His first name of Anton is the same as the founder of the Church of Satan, Anton LaVey, born Howard Stanton LaVey. Also of significance was that he was a Russian-born Jewish actor, which would have caught the attention of the Hollywood moguls. Conspiracy theorists suggest that throughout the young actor's films there were clues of his planned sacrifice embedded in encrypted words and images that only Hollywood elite devil worshippers understand. This is a world that operates below the surface, which laughs at the stupidity of the masses. Or were they just coincidences? Yelchin's first starring role was in the film Hearts in Atlantis, which was released barely 2 weeks after the 9/11 attack on the Twin Towers. Prior to this, he had small parts in Along Came a Spider. In Hearts in Atlantis, he plays Bobby, who, as an adult, remembers himself when he was 11 years old, which was 40 years in the past. The song Ain't That a Shame plays in the background. Ted Brodigan, played by Anthony Hopkins, is the main character. He appears one day in the town and hires Bobby to read the newspaper to him, since he claims his eyesight is very poor. As the film progresses, the older man and the fatherless boy develop a strong relationship. It's also obvious the mysterious Ted Brodigan is highly psychic, allowing him to see far beyond what his waning human vision allows. One day, Brodigan confronts the school bully with his knowledge, stopping him from picking on Bobby. He is also aware that Bobby's mother is self-absorbed and selfish, since she feels burdened bringing up her son by herself, since Bobby's father died when he was 5 years old. Her dark secret is that she was raped at a convention after she was duped into attending by her employer, who used her vanity against her. Ted warns Bobby about the low men that wear dark clothing, hats, and travel in dark cars. They cast long shadows, and they are looking for him, since he has something they want. Brodigan warns Bobby that when he sees posters for lost dogs, they have arrived in the town, and that they will eventually come after him as well. The reason being that Bobby is psychic just as he is. At an amusement park, Bobby is able to beat a swindler with his abilities. Who are the low men? Do they represent men in black, spiritual white hats, or henchmen for the New World Order? References to death are unmistakable throughout the film. The day arrives when Bobby sees the posters for lost dogs, just as Brodigan had warned him. He witnesses when they push Ted into a car parked in a dark alley with a neon pawn sign in the background. He never sees Ted again. Was Bobby a pawn? Are we all pawns? Bobby leaves the town soon after and loses contact with his girlfriend. 40 years pass before he returns to the town only to find out she has died. He meets her daughter, Molly, and he gives her a photo he had of her mother, which he always carried with him. In it, she had butterfly wings, a well-known symbol for MK Ultra mind control, symbolizing transformation. It's frequently seen on album covers, celebrity clothing, and publicity photos. At the end of the movie, Bobby recollects, quote, "That summer was the last summer of my childhood." His last sight of Ted Brodigan was when the man pressed his 5 fingers against the back window of the car, a symbol in some circles to mean death. Do celebrities, whether they work in the music industry or film, understand what will be required of them and the repercussions of their decisions? That they will have to commit depraved actions that later will be used to blackmail them as well as corrupt them? The price of golden opportunities is often participation in blood oath rituals. Starting in 2002, Anton played a child in the TV miniseries Taken. then in 2003 appeared in an episode of Without a Trace, which share a common theme of missing children. These lost children could be representative of those in the industry or those trafficked for elites and pedo rings. In 2004, Yelchin played Jack in the TV movie Jack and the House of D. In 2005, he worked in the movie Fierce People. The following is a blurb for it. Quote, Finn, played by Anton Yelchin, is a teenager trying to escape his drug-addicted mother by going to study tribal people. His hopes are dashed when he gets caught scoring drugs for her, and she decides to start their lives over by moving them in with her massage client, billionaire Ogden, played by Donald Sutherland. At first, Finn indulges in the luxuries around him and falls for Ogden's granddaughter, but he soon finds that the rich can be more savage than any group in the wild. End quote. Thus, Sutherland represents the dark underbelly of Hollywood. Like Stanley Kubrick in real life, Finn finds that the hedonistic lifestyle of the elites only leads to disappointment or possibly death. In 2006, Yelchin worked in the film Alpha Dog, based on a real case of murder. He portrays Zach Mazursky, who is kidnapped by a teenage drug dealer to settle a debt. Eventually, he's marched to where he will be shot. After tying his hands and putting tape over his mouth, he's pushed into a hole in the ground and a bullet is put in him. The shallow grave is found a few days later by hikers. The film was directed by Nick Cassavetes, whose father John starred in Rosemary's Baby, which was directed by child rapist Roman Polanski. Is the film symbolic of the Hollywood pyramid scheme, which Hayes initiates on a casting couch through forced violence and homosexual acts among young toughs who need to establish a pecking order? Rich slaves are subservient to a master, and even though it's not mentioned out in the open publicly, the truth is disguised in plain sight and called drama. In a moment of foreshadowing, in the 2013 film Odd Thomas, there is a scene in which the main character, played by Anton Yelchin, is almost pinned by a black Jeep. In 2014, he worked in Rudderless, which was followed by a similar film in 2015 titled The Driftless Area. A blurb for the movie reads, when a man returns to his hometown after his parents die, he becomes involved in a dangerous situation with a woman and a violent criminal. Anton plays the part of Pierre, who while hitchhiking is picked up by a man that he doesn't know is a violent criminal. They fight in the cabin of the truck they're traveling in, and Pierre throws a rock, knocking the driver out and causes him to crash. Inside the truck, Pierre finds a bag of money, which he takes. Still traveling on foot, Pierre falls into a deep well full of water. He spends a night trapped, and just as he fears he will die, he's rescued by the character Stella. He begins a weird relationship with Stella, who has lost her memory after being in a fire. She tells Pierre that now he owes her since she saved his life. Towards the end of the film, it's revealed that Stella is a ghost who died in the fire, and when Pierre is killed, she leads him into the light. This film was followed by another that ended with the death of Anton's character, titled The Green Room. His co-star was Patrick Stewart, who played the part of a club owner. Anton's character is part of a band who witnessed a murder committed by Stewart, and they are slated for death because of what they know. Another co-star was Jonathan Jackson. Both Jackson and Yelchin portrayed Kyle Reese, one of the main characters in the Terminator movies. Only a few years later, Anton Yelchin was terminated by a machine. In a 15-year film career, he always played the nice guy, the victim. His characters always seemed to be on the road to death. Did this mirror his real life? In 2010, Randy Quaid, an Oscar-nominated star, fled to Canada from the U.S. after claiming he was on a hit list of a group of mysterious killer known as Star Whackers. He claimed that Heath Ledger, David Carradine, Chris Penn, and at least 5 others were done away with by this murderous group of Hollywood accountants and lawyers. In September 2024, Sean Diddy Combs was arrested in a sex trafficking probe. He had recently been accused of repeated instances of sexual and physical abuse during the height of his fame as a producer to huge names in hip-hop like Mary J. Blige, Usher, Lil' Kim, and the late Biggie Smalls in the 1990s and 2000s. Combs is also facing accusations of years of domestic and sexual violence against his one-time girlfriend, Casey Ventura. His mansions in Miami and Beverly Hills were raided in March 2024 by Homeland Security. He is facing scores of male and female victims who accuse him of allegedly drugging and raping them, filming their sexual encounters without their knowledge or consent, and forcing them to have sex with others. As of October 2024, 120 people have come forward with lawsuits against Combs, including one where he drugged and raped a 13-year-old girl. Of the 120 victims, 25 were underage at the time of the abuse, the youngest being 9, 14, and 15. There's even an adult woman who was raped and sodomized while being pregnant. Most of the claims were from victims looking for advancement for their TV or music careers, which Combs allegedly promised to do. According to the attorney firms representing the victims, many of them have medical records that prove they were drugged and or raped. Much of the abuse took place at parties such as Diddy's infamous white parties. And that goes to show you again that we come back to that, um, that many years ago, yeah, you heard of these white parties, but it was like, yeah, they were outrageous, but the rape and the pedophile victims, now all of a sudden all these things are coming up. So that's why that reference to the Orlando case, it's unfortunate, but yeah, that's more, I think, where that if it's ever solved, that's, I think, where the answer's gonna that she was abducted for something along those lines. Now, this is an older story. This is titled Two True Tales of the Supernatural. There are those persons who seek out an encounter with the supernatural, and there are those who have incidents unfolding before their eyes, making them unwilling witnesses to the shades of those who have long since been dead. Footsteps back in time. By the way, this was taken from McCall's article back in 1998. Born at the turn of the century, Mary's grandmother Florence carved a strong figure of independence for her time. She attended law school and later bought a 1795 clapboard farmhouse on 115 acres near Belvedere, New Jersey, with money her husband gave her to purchase a fur coat. The couple lived in Staten Island but spent summers and weekends at the country house with their children and grandchildren until their death in the 1980s. After that, the kids would come up on weekends, often with friends. It was an amazing place filled with antique furniture, hand-hewn floorboards, and wood-burning fireplaces. And when Mary, following in the tradition of her grandmother and her mother, went to law school, she loved to visit the house and to unwind. Right after graduation in 1989, Mary arrived with a friend from law school. At dusk, she went out for a run, leaving her friend reading in the kitchen. On her way back through the woods, she jogged alongside the big horse pasture leading up to the farmhouse. There in the dark, her friend sat perched on the split-rail fence. "Is that you? What are you doing out in the dark?" Mary asked. Look, she stammered. "I know you don't believe me, but your grandmother's in the house." "What?" "I heard someone coming down the stairs. I heard these loud footsteps." For as long as Mary could remember, her grandmother had worn Oxfords with curved heels, and the sound of them flicking on old floorboards was very distinctive. Too scared to stay in the house, Mary's friend had been willing to hang on the fence in the dark for as long as it took Mary to get back. Since then, Mary, excuse me, has heard the clicking heels coming from the back of the house or a stairwell leading up to the dormitory. So have her three younger sisters and many of their friends. I don't believe in ghosts, but I could name 34 other people who've heard the clicking heels sound, Mary says. It's so distinctive. At this point, everyone just acknowledges it's my grandmother. Somehow, it's not scary anymore. It's just a familiar sound. I found it almost comforting, as if that's the way it should be, as if she's glad we're there. This other one, the lady was so strange. It was a cold and rainy Veterans Day, and the drizzle only added to the eeriness of Arlington National Cemetery. 20 at the time, Marianne had flown to Washington, D.C. from Boston with her sister Kathy to visit their older sister Joan, her husband Carl, and their daughter in their new home on the outskirts of the capital. Tired and wet, the sisters hoped to warm up with a tour of the Arlington House, the home of Confederate General Robert E. Lee, which sits on a hill in the cemetery. Carl went to get the car. It was late in the afternoon, and the house was dark, but the doors were open. There were no guides waiting to lead tours, however, and not a single other tourist waiting to take one. "Hello, anyone here?" Joan called out. No answer. "Hello, is it okay to come through?" Still no answer. Huddling, the group moved slowly down the dark hallway, past cordoned-off rooms that were illuminated only by the fading daylight. "We were giggling like kids do when they're somewhere they know they're not supposed to be," said Marianne. Finally, they reached a room with a fireplace, above which hung a painting of a young woman they assumed was Lee's granddaughter. Unlike the other rooms, this one had a metal gate spanning the doorway instead of a rope, and in front of the fireplace a woman stood with her back to them, in a white bonnet and a long dress from the late 1800s, lighting candles on the mantel. "Excuse me," Jones said. "Hello, excuse me, but is the mansion closed?" The woman continued lighting candles without turning around. Shrugging the woman off, the group continued down the hallway and around the corner, only to come to another metal gated door leading into the same room. "Now, here's the strange part," Marianne recalls. The woman was gone. The sisters looked around thinking maybe they'd missed an entrance to the room. They hadn't. The more we thought about it, the more questions were raised. How did she get into the room? Where did she go? And how come there was nobody there, said Marianne. Jones suggested they leave without finishing the tour, and they raced out the door, never knowing who was the lady lighting the candles on the mantelpiece. The house has been known to be haunted by the ghost of a little boy and a dog. But considering that it's located in the middle of Arlington National Cemetery and that it was seized early in the war, it became the last resting place for Union War dead. So, let's keep on talking about ghosts, shall we? This is out of LA First, or latest. It's titled Marilyn Monroe, Rudolph Valentino, the celebrity ghost you might see in Hollywood during spooky season. Welcome to Spooky LA, where over the next 4 days we'll shine flashlights on some hair-raising history and haunts across Los Angeles. To that end, we called in some experts to help us understand the ghoulish history of LA. Alright. It can be hard to part with loved ones in this life, and maybe that's why we like to believe their spirit is sticking around. That can also ring true with celebrities we've connected with. I think we kind of create these stories to keep a piece of them to ourselves and feel like we can still have that exciting personal relationship, like when you get an autograph or spot a celebrity in the wild. There is what they call the Holy Grail of ghosts, which of course is Marilyn Monroe. Her story is a tragic one, dying at the young age of 36 from a fatal overdose inside her Brentwood home on August 5, 1962. Monroe is reported to be spotted often throughout LA, from powder rooms to hotels. Marilyn has supposedly been seen sitting wistfully on a bench at the Hippodrome on the Santa Monica Pier. She's said to be in a full-length mirror checking her face at the Roosevelt Hotel, where she has also been seen dancing. Other sightings of Monroe have been reported at the former Hollywood Knickerbocker Hotel and in a mirror at the El Capitan Theater. Mears said her favorite story of Marilyn's sighting is at her final resting place. Marilyn is seen at her grave at the beautiful Westwood Memorial Cemetery, where they say that her tomb is sometimes surrounded by a delicate pink mist that you can see. Rudolph Valentino is another Hollywood star whose life was cut short at the age of 31. The Italian actor, nicknamed the Latin Lover, died of pleurisy on August 23, 1926. He's been spotted at his mansion in Beverly Hills called the Falcon Lair. The mansion is reportedly also haunted by a later resident, heiress Doris Duke. It's said that socialite Millicent Rogers claimed that she was even chased out of Falcon Lair one night by Valentino's ghost. Other places his ghost has reportedly frequented are the former Hollywood Knickerbocker Hotel, his beach house on Hollywood Beach, Hotel Alexandra, the bathroom of Musso and Frank Grill, and his old apartment now called Valentino Place in Hollywood. He's also been seen at Paramount Studios and the Hollywood Forever Cemetery, where, according to Mears, the Lady in Black comes to pay her respects to him every year. So, not only does Valentino appear everywhere in Hollywood, but so does his furry friend. His beloved dog Kabar is also said to be seen howling for his lost owner, both at Falcon Lair and at the fascinating Los Angeles Pet Cemetery, which is in Calabasas. Is that where Kabar is actually buried? Interesting. But sometimes, I'm not saying that they're not, but I think sometimes a lot of these is just to stir up, like, oh, I've got Valentino, I've got Marilyn Monroe hunting the places, like, Okay, this other one is also out of latest, if that's what you call her, LA history or whatever. This is titled, The Last Time a Tropical Storm Hit LA, it was 1939, nearly 100 died. Hurricane Hillary. Well, this is an older thing. All right. Okay. This was like, because this was written. This article was written, and the reason why I brought it back in 2023, and this was when Hurricane Hillary was going up the Pacific coast, and it touched down in Southern California, or was. It was they believed it, but apparently it was the first tropical storm to reach LA since 1939. All right. And the history was that the last time a tropical storm slammed into LA, the year was 1939. The Long Beach tropical storm, nicknamed El Cordonazo, or the lash of St. Francis, struck in late September of that year in Long Beach and San Pedro. It dumped 5 inches of rain on the region in just 24 hours and was accompanied by wind gusts of up to 65 miles per hour. It also resulted in $2 million in damages, which would be more than $43 million today, to crops, power lines, shore structures, and more. Nearly 100 people died in flooding or at sea. A 150-foot section of the Southern Pacific Railroad was reportedly washed out. People were stranded in their homes. Historical records from National Weather Service say California residents were generally unprepared for the storm's effects. In the aftermath of the destruction, the Weather Bureau created a Southern California forecast office that's still running today. Why are hurricanes so rare in Southern California? Usually, they only develop when ocean temperatures are at least 80 degrees, which doesn't often happen in California. The waters off Santa Monica, for example, typically range from the high 50s in winter to the high 60s in late summer. California wind patterns are also unfavorable for hurricane formation. But during a year with El Nino climate pattern, wind shear is reduced, which increases the chances that there will be a storm. El Nino also increases water temperatures, sometimes but not often, contributing to the perfect formula for a tropical storm. The reason why I also brought this up is that, over here, we had Helene and then Milton, which did a number on Florida, the Panhandle area, the Carolinas, Georgia. Yeah, quite an event. So sometimes, you know, and the reason why I say this is that everybody knows, yeah, Florida is hurricane prone, but these people up in the Carolinas, they were totally unprepared. They did not expect. In other words, that's not a hurricane region, but that just goes to show you that you never know, you know, what Mother Nature will throw at you, even the weather. So there you go. All right, I will be back soon with more eerie news, because you know who is like ready to tear my finger off because she's hungry. So till next time, take care.